Do you know what flood zone your house is in? Or if you're about to buy a home anytime in the near future, do you know how to go and proactively check those flood zones or those flood maps before you start shopping? Now, in Louisiana, that's one question that can mean the difference between a peace of mind or a massive insurance bill. And obviously, those insurance bills can affect your debt to income ratios and reduce your buying power dramatically. So it's good to know this on the front end. Now, in this video, I'm going to explain the three main FEMA flood zones, which is A, AE, and X. Then I'll explain FEMA's new risk rating 2.0 and why that makes flood zone X not as safe as it used to be, at least in the context of paying flood insurance. Now, then I'll break down what a LOMA is and why it matters. Now, here's a twist with that. Sometimes you can be in flood zone A or AE and actually get a reduction, almost like you're in flood zone X. Now, how is that? Now, that's the power of a LOMA. And finally, I'll give you the website or a website where you can go and check your own flood zone today. Now, we'll start with flood zone A, which is high risk, at least 1% chance of flooding every year, but FEMA hasn't really set any exact elevation. It's almost like knowing a storm is coming, but not knowing how high the water is going to rise. Then, of course, AE, also a high risk, but has, FEMA's done some studying. They've set a BFE, which is a base flood elevation, which is a number that, or an elevation that builders use to know how high they need to elevate a home to stay safe or to mitigate risk. And of course, everybody loves flood zone X, which is moderate to low risk. The shaded X area is about 0.2% to 1% chance of flooding every year, and the unshaded X is a minimal risk. But here's the catch with that. About 20% of the National Flood Insurance Program claims come from flood zone X properties. So lower risk doesn't mean no risk, which obviously a lot of us found that out in 2016 in that flood. Now, here's where people get confused. You might say, wait, I'm in flood zone X and I still pay flood insurance, which is me. I'm in flood zone X and I still pay, or mandated to pay flood insurance. So your lender's requiring it. And that's because of FEMA's new risk rating 2.0. So that whole system, sets their parameters. They use these specific factors, not just using the map. It's looking at things like how close you are to the water, what would it cost to rebuild your house, and even what type of flooding your area may see, which is, river overflow, storm surge, heavy rain, and so on. So two houses in the same zone can get to very different rates. Now, here's something that some people don't know. Sometimes FEMA maps put a property in a flood zone A or AE, even though the house itself sits higher than the BFE. Now, if that happens, your lender will require flood insurance, but you can challenge that with what's called a letter of map amendment, or a LOMA. You hire a surveyor, they come out, they prove your home's elevation. If FEMA agrees, they'll issue a letter that removes your property from that high risk designation. So a real world example, these developers come in, they'll build a subdivision in A or AE, which obviously they don't have much choice there. And they use this field dirt to raise the elevation. Now, once those homes are built, they all get LOMA'd out, meaning buyers don't have to carry that mandatory high risk flood insurance. And so in real estate, that's one of the few things that you being kicked out of is actually a win. And of course, like I promised, the site you want to go to is msc.fema.gov. That's FEMA's official map service center. Type in your address, zoom in, you'll see your exact flood insurance or flood zone. Now, if you're buying in Louisiana, check that first. 5 minutes of that can save you some time. You don't want to go and put a contract in on a house and then find out the flood insurance, or you're in flood zone A and the flood insurance is $7,000 a year and that kicks you out. So until next time, I'm Brandon Browning with Keller Williams Premier Partners. Thank you so much for watching.